My name is Victoria Murphy, and I am a master's in social work intern at the Idaho State Veterans Home in Boise, and I'm happy to present a day in the life of a military spouse. So to start out, I wanted to do a overview of about a year. So basically a timeline to kind of show you what it's like to be in the military. Again, this may differ depending on your job, depending on your branch, depending on what you're doing in the military. So it could be, you'd be gone longer, or even you could spend more time at home. So it really just depends on what you're doing. I did have to take out dates just for the sake of operational security. I did not want to endanger anybody in our military currently. So I just wanted to give an overview of this. So starting out, we had a PCS in June, which is a permanent change of station. Again, not saying the year. So in June we changed, we PCS'd and went to another base from where we were. Um, Basically, my husband had been home for a little over a year before we changed stations, so I had gotten used to him being home. And even after this, he had actually stayed home for a little bit longer until he deployed the next year. So from January to March, he started spin up, which is kind of like a prep for deployment. Usually lasts about 2 to 3 months before they leave. It requires longer hours, requires more work from home, and it generally takes a little bit of time away from their family and loved ones. So as a spouse, you can really start to feel that anxiety building up as they're starting to prepare to leave. And deployment was April is when he left, and he came home in October. So it was about a 7 month deployment, pretty long. It was a bit stressful over the time that he was gone. Once he returned, he was actually home for a little over a month before he went on his first TDY, which is a temporary duty yonder. It's when they go through training somewhere else. They are sent to another state, another base, and they're gone for a certain amount of time, and then they come back home. So his first TDY coming home was in December. He was gone for 1 week. He was home for about 4 weeks before he got another TDY. He was gone for 4 weeks. He was home for about 3 weeks. He was gone for another 4 weeks. And then he was home for about a month. And then he was gone another 6 week TDY. So, as I stated before, this can vary depending on your job, depending on what you do in the military. Like I said, you could spend more time at home, you could spend more time away. So it really just depends, but this is just a general overview of being in the military. So, what does being a military spouse mean? It means holding it together even when you don't want to. When your husband or your wife deploys, there's a lot of responsibility that is put on you. When we first moved to our current location, we had purchased a house, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. I had learned that I do not like to garden, but you know what? I really had to do it, otherwise we would get in trouble from the HOA that we're at. So I had to do things I did not want to do on occasion. Uh, Moving away from your family and friends, chances are when you meet your future husband or wife that you will have to move away from your hometown, from your friends, from your family, from the people that you know, in order to start a life with a person that you love. Your service member may miss birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, even the birth of your child. I have known spouses that were pregnant when their husband or wife left, and they came home to a 3 or 4 month old baby that they have never met. As a spouse, I imagine that would be difficult, giving birth and then taking care of a newborn baby by yourself. And then even for your military member who, didn't get to be there for that experience. Putting your career on hold. I have known many spouses that had to quit their job in order to move to a new location when they got a PCS order. When they have kids, you may need to take that time to find your children a daycare or maybe new schools, or maybe you need new training, or maybe, when you move to um, certain states, you need new licensure. So you really need to consider that you will put your job on hold at times for the sake of being in the military and continuing on in that lifestyle. Being a spouse means parenting alone. When your husband or wife goes off somewhere else, you may have children, and that may mean taking care of those babies and those children by yourself for however long your military member is deployed. Making new friends every 3 or 4 years. Um, of course, when you PCS to a new location, chances are you'll only be there for about 3 or 4 years before you get up and move somewhere else. So, you have to make new friends, meet new people. There's always the chance that there might be other spouses that might be PCSing with you to that new location, so you will know new people. But also, there's chances that you will have to meet new people and make new friends in your new PCS location. Spending as much time together as you do apart, as I mentioned earlier with the timeline, you may spend a lot of time together, you and your husband or your wife, or you may spend more time apart during the year. It just really depends on their job. And I did not think about this when I was putting this together, but you have to be okay with the traumatic effects of war. If you have a military member or a spouse that is going out and is part of the infantry in the army, there's chances are that they're going to see some bad things. They're going to see people dying. They're going to see people losing limbs, and that really kind of digs in, and it can create PTSD symptoms. So you really have to keep that in mind when you are a military spouse, that people do die in the military, and it does happen. Pros and cons in being in the military. First, on the pros, you get a military family. You get a huge support system, even if you live on base. You have other families that live right next to you. You can get to know them. You can talk to them. A lot of the bases, they will have community activities where you can get together and meet other people. And also, like, if you are going through a hard time, all you have to do is ask. Let everybody know how you're feeling, and you will have a cavalry coming to your side to help you through the hard times. Um, Military benefits, you get health care, dental, housing, separation pay. Depending on where you are located, you can get a pretty good housing allowance if you are living off base. And also, there is also housing of most bases, not all. You get housing to live on base depending on where you are. And you can also get like separation pay when you're married. They will pay you extra to be separated from your spouse when they are deployed. Travel equals adventure. When you're in the military, of course, when you PCS, you get to go new places. We have been located in a few different states in the United States. You can go to Italy, Germany, Okinawa. I know there's a base in Hawaii. I've been told that there's a base down in the Keys that you can go to. It's temporary, but you can go there for a few months if you get that position and you're in the right job frame for that. But yeah, I mean, you can go all over the world, and if you're working in the military, and it could be a possibility that you could see places that you hadn't thought you could go see. Um, as I already mentioned before, there's a huge support system within the military. You just need to ask, and they will be there for you. Financial and housing stability. For the most part, you don't have to worry about finances. I mean, of course, you have to worry. You have to be smart about it. But generally, you're going to have a paycheck twice a month, and that's going to be there. And that really kind of helps with the mindset of, worrying about money. Housing stability, again, if you move RPCS to a new base, chances are that they will have a temporary housing system on their base that you can stay at, while you're trying to find an apartment or trying to find a house. The military is not going to leave you stranded out in the streets. They're going to make sure you have a roof over your head. So cons, of course, the top one, I had talked to a few spouses, and the top one is spending time apart, TDYs, deployments, training. And then with the deployments, you have to do like a living will, life insurance policies, power of attorneys. The living will, when you're doing that, it makes it real that there's a chance that your spouse or your husband, your wife will not be coming home, especially if they're in a dangerous situation. That really kind of puts things into perspective for the spouses. Mental illness, we are people too. We go through a lot when it comes to supporting our loved ones in the military. Depression, deployment, anger. I will go over that. That is a thing. Extreme stress, pressure to fit in. When you move into a new base, you may not get along with everybody on your base. Not saying that they are not nice, but you might have less things in common. So it takes a little while to kind of find your niche within that group. If you have animals, you have livestock. I used to have horses. If you have dogs, cats, birds, you have to pay to move them. The military will not compensate you to move your animals. You have to pay out of pocket for that. So I had mentioned this earlier. So deployment anger, it is a real thing. My last deployment, I was quite angry for a little while and I didn't quite understand why. And it is actually very natural. It does happen. So I looked it up, and this is called the 7 stages of deployment anger. And like I said, this does happen, believe it or not, with the spouses when our husbands or wives gets deployed. Stage 1 is anticipation of loss. This is 6 to 8 weeks before separation. You start to feel, you anticipate them leaving. You're anxious. You're frustrated. You might feel a little resentful, because at this point your spouse is going through spin up and they're getting ready to go and they're starting to prep, and that creates a little bit of anxiety because that means that they are going to leave. Stage 2 is emotional withdrawal. 1 week before departure, you become disconnected, withdrawn, a little confused because you want to draw them in and hold them close and show them that you love them. But at the same time, they're getting ready to leave you. You kind of want to push them away a little bit to kind of protect yourself from the shock of them actually leaving. Stage 3 is emotional confusion. 1 to 6 weeks after departure, you feel abandoned. You feel sad, lonely. As I stated before, my husband had been home for quite a while before he left, so I had gotten used to him being home. So I did. I felt pretty abandoned. I was sad. I was angry that he was gone. Not because of his job, but the fact that he was no longer home with me. That was really hard. Stage 4, adjustment and recovery. This is the majority of deployment. Usually happens about a month to month and a half-ish after your husband or wife leaves. You become more independent. You become refocused, hopeful. You have occasional moments of sorrow and anger, and it was brought up to me that, maybe this is only the female spouses that feel this way, and that is not true. I had spoken to one of our male spouses during the deployment, and he had told me, yeah, I broke down last week, and, it just happened, and I'm pretty sure it'll happen again next week. But, I just pick myself up and keep on going. You gotta have those occasional moments of sorrow and anger throughout the deployment. It's only being human, feeling those emotions. Stage 5, expectation of service members returning home. 6 to 8 weeks prior to homecoming, you're anxious, you're excited, you're wishful, you're excited that they're coming home, but you're anxious because they have been gone for so long. A big thing is operational security. You are not allowed to say to anybody else when they are coming home. You're not allowed to share dates, times, the month. where they're coming in from, because if that information gets out, there's a possibility that your loved ones that are troops coming in are going to get delayed. And that creates a lot of anxiety because a lot of people know a lot of information, and we want to keep it very tight lipped so that our men and women can come home on time. Um, Homecoming honeymoon, this is day one until your first argument. You're relieved that it's over, you're happy that they've come home. This can be in a very emotional time because your husband or wife is finally home. Reintegration and stabilization, this is 6 to 8 weeks after the return. Um, this is when you get back into creating a routine. You learn to live with each other again. It's important to be adaptive and understanding with your service member because may have developed new behaviors. They may have been through traumatic experience, so maybe they're a little withdrawn. So you need to be understanding as a spouse that some things may have changed, they may have picked up new habits. So you guys just need to learn how to work that out together. So what do spouses do during deployment? Find things to look forward to. Take a class, volunteer, start a project you've always wanted to do. I started painting, I started drawing again. I joined a kickboxing gym, just to be around other motivated people to keep me going. Reach out to others who are in the same situation. Plan an event with other families who are coping with the deployment. Find a support group through your community. Um, you know, During the deployment, me and some other spouses in my area got together once a week just to have dinner. We swapped houses each week, just to get together to talk, to laugh, to cry, just so that we knew that we weren't alone during this deployment. Don't try and hide your feelings. It's normal to feel sad, lonely, and angry when you've been separated from your spouse. A good way to do that is either talking to other spouses that will understand, talking to your friends, family, or even starting a journal. I started a journal during the deployment. Whenever I was frustrated, I would just write it out so I wouldn't really take it out on anybody around me. Concentrate on what you can control. Try to focus on things that you can control, like spending time with your family and friends, signing up for a class or volunteer opportunity. One thing for me is I was really big about keeping my house clean all the time. And really, I decided instead of cleaning every day, I'm going to clean every 2 or 3 days, because by the end of that deployment, I was just tired of cleaning all the time. So I just decided to relax a little bit and that it was okay not to have to clean every day. Learn some stress management technique that worked for you. Try out some different ways to relieve stress, such as an exercise class, journal for your thoughts, feelings, meditation, deep breathing. Um, you know, I know some of our spouses, they started working out, including me. I had a goal of losing X amount of weight before my husband came home. So not only for him, but for myself as well. I mentioned I did journals. You know, I started horseback riding again just to kind of keep my thoughts in order and to relax a little bit. Um, Taking care of yourself, get enough sleep, exercise, eat healthy meals, and be sure to drink lots of water. Even though you are by yourself, you still need to take care of yourself. Um, Practicing self-care is super important. Even if you are not, you don't have mental illness, self-care is important for anybody. In the military, there are mental health resources available for those that need it. First is the VA, or the Department of Veteran Affairs. They do have inpatient and outpatient services. Second is community-based outpatient services. You can go ahead and find these counselors and maybe a therapist that takes your insurance, and you can go ahead and get assigned to them with a referral from your PCP. The referral will need to be renewed every 6 months, or else you can pay out of pocket. Military chaplains, usually on base, there are military chaplains available. When you go and talk to them, they are sworn to confidentiality. They won't report to leadership if that is your concern. Military One Source is also another resource available provided by the military. Usually, there is a group of therapists or counselors within your area that provides up to 12 sessions per concern for free for both our military members and our military spouses. Now, within the military, there is a stigma amongst the military members that if you do happen to go to counseling or you need to talk to somebody, that they will report you to leadership and you could lose your job. You can be removed from your job or even get discharged. This is not true. I have known a few upper military leadership that do encourage their military members to go get help when they need it. So, just not being afraid of losing your job, that is one thing that needs to happen within the military, that stigma really needs to kind of go away. Because, everybody, especially if you're in the military and especially if you go through traumatic experiences, getting help, getting someone who can be there for you, you can talk to and kind of understand what you're feeling is super important for mental health in the military. Military family life counseling program is also available. And lastly, the non-military support groups and friends. This can include church and Celebrate Recovery. Usually those happens on a Friday night at your local church. It provides a really good support system. So I did mention earlier that I am an intern at the Veterans Home here in Boise. And basically this is kind of a slide to kind of tie into the military spouses for our veterans inside the Veterans Home. Even after retirement, our spouses are still a military spouse. Whether they served 4 years, whether they served the full 20, it's important to remember that they still were there to support their spouse during the time of war, during the time when they were gone and they were going through some pretty bad experiences. We have a lot of veterans that have mental illness and PTSD and have experienced a lot of things that we don't have to deal with today. It's important for the staff that's working with them not to forget that. Try to understand that even though, yes, we're taking care of the veterans here at the home, that the spouses are still being left behind to take care of everything at the house. They're coming in to see their spouses. They're coming in, they have to come in, they have to get phone calls, getting asked maybe, if they need something or, just to get updates on how their spouse is doing, and that really kind of takes away from them being at home. They're no longer keeping the home fires burning as they normally would when their spouse is off to work or off to war. There's a grieving process also, that the fact that they're not, their spouses are not coming home. They have they don't have the option to wait 3 months and then they're going to come back home and it'll be okay. So it's really hard for them to kind of go through that. And I feel like maybe sometimes our spouses at the Veterans Home kind of fall through the cracks. Support systems for our veteran home. They have a veterans family support group that gets together once a month. Kind of like to go in there, and so just to know that those spouses are not alone. Of course, the Department of Veteran Affairs, they have services for healthcare for our spouses. And then one of the biggest support groups for our spouses, at the Veterans Home and for our retired veterans is the Community Services and Support. Friends, family, other military spouses, church, outpatient services, and this is where they get most of their support system. But it's still important to remember them. Remember that even though our veterans are the ones that went off to war, that our spouses were the ones keeping everything going while they were gone. Thank you so much.